I would say, so leadership assumes followers. It assumes it's not an individual thing. It involves a group. So I would say serving and caring for a group of people such that their needs are met, that they benefit, and that probably the fruit is they want to follow you. That would be an indication of the definition fulfilled leadership.
Well, I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourself and talk about your background. But when I was doing my research, I noticed that you were at Bucknell about the same time I was at West Point. And if it's okay with you, I just want to tell a story. So I was a ball player, played baseball, and I was a good ball player. I ultimately made it to the Detroit Tigers, and that was a dream come true and all of that. But Bucknell was in our conference. Bucknell didn't like me. And I don't... I mean, look.
Were you Patriot League?
I was Patriot League, okay. Yeah, at the time. I was good ball. I punished people, right, when I hit. And there was a game where Bucknell pegged me 3 times in the bat in a row, like intentionally. They just didn't like me. I think in the whole season, they probably hit me 6 or 7 times.
Were you a big hitter or were you a contact guy, like you're going to get on base?
Well, I stole bases. I was a home run hitter. I set the record at the time for the Patriot League for number of home runs in a season. Yeah, well, I mean,
I knew you played baseball, but I didn't know.
Yeah, well, I love football. I dealt with baseball. I ended up being a better baseball player, but I love football. So I usually just talk about football, even though that stopped at high school. But I got pegged 3 times in a row in this game. But then it was at the end of the game, and it was a close game, and the bases were loaded, so they couldn't hit me. The guy had a pretty good little fork ball, and if you know about the fork ball, when they throw it, it doesn't spin a whole lot. So he was throwing them, and they were hitting the plate. And then, he threw a couple for a strike, and then he tossed one up there again, and I was able to hit it out of the park. And so I hit a grand slam. It was the last at bat of the game. It was a walk-off. So it was like
painful for us.
Yeah, it was baseball glory, but it was also like a good gotcha, because you'd hit me 3 times in a row, and I made you pay for it in the end. So I just had to tell that story because it was good versus evil for me. I don't expect you to comment on that.
No, but a pitcher who I think was a year or 2 under me was in my fraternity.
Yeah.
A guy named Jason. Great guy. I'm pretty sure he was a pitcher on the baseball team.
Was he a larger guy?
He's tall. He's probably
but he
6'2",
wasn't heavy set?
Not big, no.
Yeah, I remember there being
Athletic
a heavy set
build.
guy that could throw. He could run it up there a little bit from Bucknell.
I don't think I knew him.
Yeah, probably a different guy. It's okay. I mean...
all is forgiven now. Well, I guess
all is forgiven. I mean, I got on base every time. So, I mean, I think ultimately it probably paid off in the end to hit me like that. You're like 20 years old and you're like this isn't fun. These guys are just hitting me every time I come up the bat. But I actually, the same season that I broke the home run record for the Patriot, was close to breaking the record for getting hit by pitch. Not walks, getting hit by pitch.
Man.
I like to pull the ball. I didn't like hitting it the other way. And so I would get close to the plate. So anyways.
I got to tell you a quick story just on getting hit. So I should have stuck with baseball.
Yeah.
I was good in the field. I was typically a second baseman, played all growing up, and kind of water polo was cool in middle school and high school, so I pivoted. But played baseball all growing up. And I remember right when we transitioned, I started in T-ball, coach pitch, kid pitch. Right when we transitioned to kid pitch, we were probably still in elementary school, I was a good hitter, and I was not a big hitter. I was not a home run guy like you. I was a contact guy. I'd hit anything. And so I was typically leadoff batter. And right when we started kid pitch, I would get hit all the time.
Yeah.
Because you got kids who they've never pitched before.
Yeah.
Wild arms, and
groove.
The coach was always like, Austin, I love it, man. You stay in the batter's box no matter what, and it's almost a guarantee you're going to get beaten with the ball.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then you got on base, and you got to get on base to score, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
So I was either hitting or getting hit.
Yeah.
No strikeouts.
No, I mean, I struck out. So I think I was, it was kind of one of those things don't overswing. Remember that? I was an overswinger. I was trying to hit it out of the park every time.
The big hitters, you got to swing.
All right, let's talk business. Why don't you tell everybody your background? And, this is going to be a leadership conversation, so just kind of shift it in that direction. But you and I have already talked. I want to talk leading in business, but I want to talk leadership in the family too. So, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So grew up in Santa Barbara, California, and really from an early age, kind of weaving leadership in, saw really strong leadership. My dad, very strong leader in our family, someone that we as kids looked up to, kind of a silent leader in our family, I would say. Like, he exemplified strong values and morals, and we would observe that. And so it was more observing him than it was him giving like verbal instruction or guidance. And so watching his example was super formative for my siblings and I. And then just in our community, I was kind of raised by many families that were all really close friends. I mean, incredible gift and blessing to grow up in that type of environment. And so, you know, these other parents kind of had authority in my life. And so I got to see, and also our community was very entrepreneurial. Like my dad, managing partner of a law firm, small firm. Everyone was in real estate in some way, you know, developer friends, investors, running brokerages, and all entrepreneurs. And so I was watching from a distance, and I, you know, as a kid, couldn't articulate what I was watching, but I was watching how they led their companies. I was watching how they led their families, and I was benefiting from their leadership as a young kid. So, and then I think another thing I'll bring up, I haven't talked about in a while that was formative from a leadership standpoint. I played sports, and I think I was never like the captain of the team, but there's like, you know, individual leadership roles that kind of emerge on sports team just by nature of a team environment.
Yeah.
But nothing crazy I'd call out there.
Yeah.
But did Boy Scouts, and that was pretty formative from a leadership perspective. Had this incredible scout leader that kind of, that type of guy just doesn't exist anymore. Our scoutmaster, his name is Otis Califf, total Renaissance man, very like stern and kind of a little rough around the edges, but could play like classical violin and recite poetry. We had a reverence for this guy. Like, we would not mess with Otis. But we had deep respect for him, cared for by him, but we had deep reverence. Like, we would never mess with him. And so just observing his leadership, and then in the scout troop, there's all these different leadership roles, and you're kind of like herding cats by, you know, trying to coordinate kids to do different initiatives or win a competition, or, you know, we'd go out into the Sierra Nevada mountain range for 10 days on a backpack trip, and you're coordinating all your food that you're carrying for that trip. You're caring for the younger guys who are struggling on the hikes. You know, they got so a lot of leadership through that, and then moved on to Eagle Scout, where you're coordinating all the scouts to help with the service project. I built this bench for mine. So that was really foundational for my leadership. And then went across the country to college, went to Bucknell, studied mechanical engineering. And I think I came to college with, a new confidence and self-awareness that I didn't have before. And so I just naturally gravitated toward leadership roles. Social chair of my fraternity, Young Life Leaders, so that was a volunteer thing where I was mentoring high school students, different clubs on campus. I just would kind of move into that role naturally in a way that I hadn't in high school. And I think I was maybe more, you know, shy or insecure in high school. So I think that kind of caps a lot of the leadership components through college. And then I'll touch on professional experience coming out of school. Did a 1-year leadership and development program in Washington, D.C. following college. Pretty unique year where I was being invested in heavily by mentors alongside other interns that I was in this cohort with. 6 of us guys, all lived in a house together. Very unique time where we could just focus on personal and spiritual growth. There was a faith component to it. And just be poured into by some incredible, you know, older guys and a community of people. So unique year where we could just work on ourselves and our faith and our relationships for a year. So that launched a season in DC for me. Career-wise, right following that 1-year program, worked for Deloitte for 5 years, half in their commercial practice, half in their federal practice. Most of my federal work was with Department of Defense, where we'd be called in when, this happens a lot in government, where a program would run over schedule and over budget, and we would come in, my team would come in to kind of right the ship. So figure out what's going wrong, how can we get back on track, how can we improve performance. Yeah. So that was really fascinating to, you know, work on these different projects. Did a lot of work with Afghanistan reconstruction effort. And there was a time where I was writing a congressional report, and I'd be talking to people on the ground in Afghanistan. You know, how many mines did we dig up? How many Afghan army members did we train? All this. It was fascinating. And then writing a report that would go out to Congress and the public. Like, that's how the public would learn about Afghan stuff outside the news and things. Yeah. Learned at Deloitte that I'm not a big organization guy. And I think the leadership thread at Deloitte that was really helpful and instrumental in my growth is I would just find the leaders. And I discovered this unique thing where I'm at a big company, like some 300,000 employees, but because I have a Deloitte email address, I can email the CEO of the entire company. I can email all the partners that lead our local firm, and hey, they'll respond to me. You know, and so I would just do that all the time. I'd get on calls. Actually, I was on a little call with the CEO where he was connecting with a little cohort of younger people in the company, on a quarterly basis, and we'd give, feedback. We didn't know anything, but we had a dialogue with him, which was pretty cool. And that was like, I was just seeking that out. And then I just lived in the partners' offices. I mean, I'd be in there all the time. We've got this opportunity. What's going to differentiate us? Like just gleaning. But, learn along that journey, like I'm not a big company guy. I think the negative components of that, like I was disillusioned with, bureaucracy, kind of like the slow moving nature of any big organization. And I thought, man, I think I'm a builder. I like smaller things. So that launched a number of years in software sales with really young companies, kind of bringing them to market, working with the leaders of the company to position the organization. I'll fast forward a little bit through that. I think working for these different software companies, I realized I want my job to align with my vocation or my calling, and I want it to be a strong mission that just drives me.
Yeah.
I think for a while I was kind of looking for something existing in the world that would fit that. Like I looked for a business to buy for a while. And I was looking at blue collar kind of trades businesses, made an offer on one, got fairly close. Seller decided I didn't want to sell on that one. That was a little bit of a heartbreak. And this, like through the deal search process, you start to hone in more and more on what you're looking for. And for me, I was crystallizing my mission. I have always been passionate in my life at helping others maximize their potential, helping them thrive. So I've helped a million friends find jobs. I just love that.
Yeah.
And I felt this calling that was new of taking that personal calling that I'd had and applying that to the household and really helping families thrive. I was like, okay, well, what would have me in the home, as a business model? And then home services came to play. And so now I run a company called Loyal Home Concierge. We do preventative maintenance, so regular servicing of a home, and they also do general handyman. So we're in people's houses a lot.
I had wrote this down. You called yourself an eternal optimist. I mean, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a glasses half full guy, but I'm fascinated with these different personality assessments, like have found the Enneagram to be a really helpful tool for me. So I'm an incredibly strong 1. Like the description of the 1 is me to a T. And so I can look at anything in the world and just see opportunity. Like look at a rundown building. I'm like, oh my gosh, what could that be? So it's always a positive thing, seeing the potential in people and in things. So that kind of breeds just, this natural optimism.
Yeah. Has that ever caused an issue?
Of course. I'm trying to think of a good example. I think I could go in a number of directions with this, but I think I'll give kind of a low-hanging fruit fun one that's not too deep, but have always loved old, like boxy SUVs. Like I had a Bronco for a while, 1970s, it was sweet. And I've always loved Defenders, Land Rover Defenders. And so one night I'm out to dinner with some friends, and I'd kind of been tracking a couple of Defenders on eBay. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm going to place a bid on this one that's in Florida. Haven't seen it. Defender 110, British, so right-hand driver. And the auction's kind of ending, and I'm thinking, like, low odds I win. And I win. And I'm like, I'm still at the dinner table with my boys. I'm like, guys, I just bought a car.
That's hilarious.
And so that thing, it was more kind of a romantic dream. I get the thing, and I had to, like, force the title through because I think it was brought over illegally. I mean, it was challenging to get it legal in D.C. where I was. And then the thing just was a litany of issues. An all-original 1984, rusted everything, rotted radiator, probably been sitting in a field in London or, UK. And so it was a little bit of a lemon. So I was optimistic about the vision of it. I mean, I put a ton of money into fixing it. I found a great local mechanic, but I just got tired of putting more and more money into it.
Yeah.
And when we'd need a part replacement, we'd have to like creatively source it because they weren't widely available parts. And so I was like, I'm just going to take a loss on this one.
Yeah.
Too optimistic there.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my biggest leadership lessons ever in my life, and one I've struggled with today, and I know this will resonate with you because of the optimist part. I'm a very big optimist. In fact, the lady that's worked with me the longest, Gracie, my assistant, she's a bit naturally pessimistic. Not that she lives a miserable life, but like she can see things that are going to break. Like that's her gift, right? Where you and I could see the potential. And I've recruited her to my life. We're a very good complement because she challenges me on things.
She's like, are you sure about this?
Oh, yeah. Have you thought about this? I mean, that's a staple in our conversations day to day. Have you thought about this? And I'm a thoughtful person, so more often than not, I've thought about it. But she's helpful in that way. There was a time when I was in combat where I always thought, well, what if this happens, right? Because lives were at stake. I'm not in combat anymore. So I need somebody to prompt me from time to time with like some reality of what could happen.
Let me ask a question about that. And this is a leadership related thing. But
Yeah.
I think great leaders empower their team. So
Yeah.
with Gracie, did you have to verbally give authority to her to call you out on, when you're being too optimistic, or did she naturally feel that authority? Because that takes a certain amount of authority and
there was a natural kind of period of time where I was earning her trust and helping her feel safe with me. As I've gotten older, I've gotten better at like shorting the timeline on that, because I just lead with that now. Like I lead with love. I want my team to know that I love them. They don't have to earn that. I just give it to them. And generally, when someone feels love right away, they'll feel safe and they'll trust you, and then they'll open up. It didn't take her very long. She's a bold person by nature. She's more task oriented, to your behavior point, and she'll just lay it out there. More often than not. Well, I shouldn't say that. Economists are half right, half wrong, right? But half the time I'm right, half the time she's wrong, and half the time the other way. But yeah, she just said it. It didn't take me very long to get her into a position where she felt comfortable saying it. The lesson that I've learned, and I've learned it a couple times, and I'll share it with you, and it'll resonate because it's probably something you have to pay attention to. And I have to pay attention to it in my marriage. When I was in Baghdad, it was a really nasty fight. We were fighting directly against Al-Qaeda. So it was a Sunni area in Baghdad. So Al-Qaeda was our number one combatant. And Al-Qaeda was well equipped, and they had, IEDs, roadside bombs and things like that. And it was stressful. I mean, every time you'd walk down the street or every time you'd get in your Humvee and drive down the road, there was a pretty high chance that you were going to come into contact with an IED. Now, it may not blow up on you, but you're going to see it. And sometimes finding them are just as stressful as them blowing up on you, because once you find one, you can't leave. You got to secure it, and then you got to wait for the explosive ordnance team to come and like deactivate it and take it away safely, right? And so you're sitting duck for a while. You're just sitting there. And so the roadside bomb was a big part of what we did every day. People were losing their lives. We had a lot of lives lost at the time. The optimistic part of me was that, hey, things are going well. My guys are strong. They're healthy. They know the mission. They understand why we're here. I'm leading them well. We're all okay. And it was okay for a little while. But then my lead truck, the guys that operated the lead truck, that were always first. And I believe in getting niche and becoming experts at what you do. So I love the fact that my lead truck commander could close his eyes and literally picture the whole battlefield, every road, everything. Like, he had led so many patrols that he knew when something was out of place. And when something's out of place, usually that's a bad thing. I had driven those guys so hard being first. They had so much responsibility when everybody behind them would get blown up, or they were so scared of themselves getting blown up that they came to me and they begged me to rotate, just to not have them first every time, to rotate them. And that was a very humbling time in my life, and very hurtful time for me, because I love those guys. And in trying to do a good thing, I didn't notice that I was just driving them into the ground. Like, I was just wearing them out. The stress was getting to them. And they didn't have to beg me to do it, but they did beg me. Like, that's how it came off. And so it was a very desperate conversation, and I should have never let them get there. But because I always thought, they're good. They're the best truck in our unit. Like, they're good. I let them get to that point. And then I did it again. In rotating, I had people come to me and say, hey, we can't do it. And I was like, you know what? My truck will be the first one every time. And I was like, I control the environment in my truck, and I'm strong enough to do this. And I did that for a while. And then my own guys in my truck came and knocked on the door. And Austin, they didn't want to do this. They didn't want to ask to not be in the first truck every time, because they wanted to be there for me. Yeah, I had them crying. And it was super unfortunate that I put them through that, and I made them ask instead of me like offer, for them to rotate out. It was a lesson I never learned. I call it pace. The leader sets the pace, and your pace as a leader can't be the same pace that you expect from your team, because when you're the leader and you own the company, yeah, you should set a very fast pace for yourself, because the responsibility is the greatest with the leader, right? But for you to go to the line, as they say in the military, and expect the same thing out of that person on the line who doesn't have as much responsibility, doesn't have as much experience, doesn't make as much money, however you want to say it, and expect them to run at the same pace as you, that's not caring, that's foolish. And I was doing that. So the story ends up where I was the only one in the front truck, and I literally rotated the people through. So I controlled the environment in the front truck, but I was the only one to stay in the front truck. And, and I have my own issues that I deal with because of all that stress. But my positivity and thinking that people are always going to be okay, it got me, and so kind of move forward and just talk about my marriage a little bit. Is my wife always going to be okay? Yeah, she's going to always be okay. Does she need to hear that from me every time she's having an issue? Well, I've learned that, no, you don't have to tell your wife that she's going to be okay. Like, she knows she's going to be okay. Sometimes she brings things to your attention because she just needs somebody to talk to. And so a guy like me, and probably like you, I get right to fixing, right? And I get right to talking about, like, well, look at all the stuff we can be grateful for. Look at all the things that are going to go right. Sometimes it's okay to just be there and listen and not speak. I'm so quick to speak because I got positive things to say that I believe in my heart, are going to make you feel better. That's not what she's asking for in that moment. It's a good lesson learned.
A definite challenge of an internal optimist there.
Yep.
For sure.
All right. I want to talk about leadership, but I like to set the table, because we all have our own definition of leadership. Take your time if you want. But what would be your definition of leadership if you were to describe that word to someone?
I would say, so leadership assumes followers. It assumes it's not an individual thing. It involves a group. So I would say serving and caring for a group of people such that their needs are met, that they benefit, and that probably the fruit of it is they want to follow you. That would be an indication of the definition fulfilled leadership.
What do you think makes them want to follow you?
I think, you touched on some of it through your story about the battlefield of, I think, a other focus. You have an other orientation. If I, in my business, am self-focused, self-aware, kind of navel-gazing, man, I've lost it.
Yeah.
I am not going to relate well to my team. I am not going to be earning trust with homeowners. I'm not going to be building the type of relationships I want to. Company won't be growing. And so it's this, I think great leaders have an extreme orientation in other focus and an extreme awareness and an empathy and a humility. We use those two words all the time in the business, humility and empathy. That's what we're about. Those are our two foundational values. Yeah. Everything's built on top of that. I think essential in leadership.
Well, I mean, you guys have to. People call you when things are going wrong, right? Like something's broken
stressful
or
situations.
Yeah. The problems in the house are expensive. Do you find that you need to get yourself in a position to go lead? Is there a morning routine, or is there something that you do for yourself every day so that you can walk into the office and be who your team needs you to be?
Yeah, kind of it's a threefold thing. I work out every morning, and that's big for me. And that's kind of, I had to make that shift just because fitting in at night got too difficult. Work run late, or there's a social commitment. And so it was continually slipping off the counter. I'm like, man, I got to change things up. So I enjoyed a little less in the morning, but I see the benefit of it, of just, moving my physical body helps my headspace. And if maybe I wake up stressed about something, the gym is like the great equalizer with stress. And so I can have a very healthy outlet and just start the day in a good place physically and mentally. And then the other two pieces, having just a little bit of quiet time, silence. So no phone. I do this after the gym, just a little bit of silence, and that's thinking time. That's also prayer for me and connecting with God. That's a big part of starting my day. I do some reading. I've always been envious of people who are really good at journaling. And I have a friend who has journaled every single day since elementary school. And he has these journals. I'm like, man, I'm envious of that. Man. It's a chore for me to journal. I've done the old exercise of leaving a journal on my nightstand thinking, if it's there, I'm going to use it. Never works. But I have this little gratitude journal that simplifies the process for me. So every morning I'll write down 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 hopes for the day. And that's really great. Like, how do I want to show up today? I know I'm having, lunch with Schuyler. How do I want to be in that lunch? Maybe I want to help you with an opportunity or encourage you in some way. And then an affirmation. And typically that's a spiritually related thing for me of, what does God say about me? What is my identity? It's more than my business. It's more than my relationships. It's more than my performance. And at the end of the day, I'll come back and I'll kind of write a little recap. And so it's a helpful kind of 180 there.
I think that, sounds like you are journaling.
Little fill in the blanks, which are helpful.
Yeah. You and I have connected on some of the stuff that I do. Those are just journal posts. What holds me accountable to doing it is I've shared it with the world. So my accountability to journal is, I'm doing it for someone else. Someone's not going to take the effort that I'm putting forth into reading these books or doing this thinking time to comprehend things in a really strong way. So what I'm doing is I'm like, well, don't worry about reading the chapter. I'll summarize it and I'll post it for you. And I send that out. Maybe if you start writing for other people, it'll hold you accountable to really journal.
Yeah. And I am so grateful for your distillations because I am a horribly slow reader. And so I'm like, pacing through books, and it'll take me sometimes months to finish a book, but I get the download from different books that you've read, and I get the benefit of like, some key takeaways through Schuyler's lens. And I think there's a lot of similarity in how we see the world. So I'm like, yes, all right, gonna grab that. Great.
Okay. So I think what you're saying there, I call it leading yourself. And really, you hear the gurus talk about being in peak state. You hear them talking about being healthy. What are all the hacks around that? And I think what I heard you say was you make sure you're physically healthy, right? By exercising every day. Stress can't live in your body because you worked it out. You're spiritually healthy. You're connected with God. And I know the two big things that God wants you to do. He wants you to love God and he wants you to love all his children, right? Right away, spiritually healthy, you're thinking of other people. And then with the thinking time and the journaling and all that, you're mentally healthy, right? I believe to be your best for your team, you got to start every day with being physically, spiritually, and mentally healthy. You just have to. It doesn't matter so much how you do it, but you have to do it. If you're going to be your best, if you want to be average, then go do average things. But like if you're going to be your best, you got to have a morning routine like that.
Totally.
It'd be a shame if you were doing it at the end of the day because nobody gets the benefit of that. And that's the whole point, right? Leaders go pour into others. For yourself, and just kind of continuing on the theme that we were just talking about, what's the biggest risk for you not being who you need to be for your team? And just like a daily normal risk.
Are you thinking risk to the business?
Risk to you being the leader that you need to be for others. Like what could creep up if you weren't managing it that could make you perform in a way that's not the way that you want to perform?
So you're talking more about the risk factor versus the implication of it.
Yeah, I'm talking about the risk factor. Mm-hmm. What are you thinking about that maybe every once in a while you got to reel yourself back in because you're not being that person that you need to be?
I think, and this is just what pops to mind, and maybe mention this will spur thinking about other risks, but a challenging interaction is the biggest risk. So we had an instance recently where oftentimes with our work, we're the one phone call for our members, for the ones we're doing preventative maintenance for, and any need related to the home, like it goes through us. And so we're their advocate, we're their champion, we're their detective, we're the due diligence team. And so we'd brought in a company, and I'll kind of keep it vague, and they didn't do what they committed to. And it took a while for them to acknowledge that. And there were some challenging interactions through it. And so the risk of that, I think when I sense injustice, particularly when it comes to other people, like things boil up because it's hard for me to see that. And so I was feeling that, continually having to tell myself, Austin, like, how do you want to show up when you're talking to this company? I want to be humble and empathetic, back to those values. So I'm like doing some breathing exercises before the call, coming after the call, challenging interaction, my heart's elevated, reminding myself I have to ground again, remind myself, what am I about? Come back to the mission, but that's probably the biggest risk factor.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to talk about this during the company kind of portion of leading, but you're coming back to culture or values, right? If you remind yourself of your values, whether they're natural or not, in the moment, you can operate a certain way because you are values driven.
Totally.
And that helps us do hard things that maybe aren't natural sometimes. All right, shift gears a little bit and talk about leading a team, okay? Because I see the world of leadership in leading yourself, leading your team, and then leading your company. So leading your team. How do you cast a vision just for the team? And I'm not saying the company, but just for the team that you're speaking to. How do you do that? Do you do it as a vision for each individual, or do you do it as a vision for the whole team? Any specifics there that?
A combination. I'm going to share how I approach both. And also, this was helpful. I just joined a mastermind group, great group called The Foundry. And on Friday, we talked through what's our vision, what's our mission, what are our values, and then underneath that. So vision is long-term, what do you want in the future? Mission, what are you about? What's your purpose? Values support the mission. How are you going to fulfill on that mission? What are the principles that let you fulfill? And then below that is your strategy and then your goals, and that's kind of the tactical portion. So with the company, with my team, I'm relentless about our mission and our values. We've got just a couple core values, and so they all know them. They can recite it, and I'll quiz them on it. And sometimes it almost feels overly repetitive, but we're talking about it all the time. We have a Monday kickoff meeting, and so every meeting we'll read through them, and then I think what is particularly helpful is I'll cite or they'll cite examples of what a manifestation of the value looks like.
Yeah.
What would that look like as we're serving a homeowner? Like one of our core values, think and act like an owner. So when we're in a home, like we're acting like we own the home. We're making decisions that are pragmatic, that are taking the long view, not, short-term wins. So it's fun to hear them cite examples of either things they did, on a job the prior week or hypotheticals. I'm like, all right, yeah, you're getting it. No. And then, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's perfect. I read a book that the whole point of the book was to teach you how to learn things effectively. There's two key things that you can always do. One is recall, which you're asking your guys, like, tell me so you're making them recall the information. And two is tying it to a story, which is essentially what you're having them do too. So you're having them recall and tie it to a story. And that's why they remember it so much.
Our memory as humans is tied to story. We just connect with story more than any other avenue of information sharing. So that's kind of the organization as the whole side. And then individually, I want my team to know, like, I'm their biggest champion. And so there's a lot of emphasis and time spent on their personal goals. They have goals related to the business, and they're accountable to me with those, and we talk through those, and they're reviewed quarterly on those. I want to know, what are their personal goals? Can I help with that? And so things we talk about in those personal check-ins, how are they thinking about retirement? One of my guys would like to own a portfolio of homes. How can we get him on that track? What does he need to be thinking about now? He's a young guy now to be moving in that direction. And he's about this particular guy. He's about to get married, and so he's got some goals for that relationship. How can I encourage him in those? So, I'm a big goal guy. You are too. And so a lot of times I'm teaching them how to form goals and then refine them over time, and we'll do check-ins. And I just want to be an encourager there more than I think a challenger with their personal goals. I want to be an encourager.
We've talked about sports more than once already, but I like the vision talk at the team level with like the offense in mind. Football, you have the vision for your offense, right? We're going to be fast-paced, or we're going to be spread offense, or we're going to be pro style, whatever it is, right? We're a running team or a passing team. So you have your vision for the offense, but then each individual position has its own vision too, right? The quarterback isn't going to look like the offensive tackle, right? They're going to have different gifts, different abilities, different jobs. The wide receiver doesn't look like the center. So every person on the team, you have a vision for too. And what I've found, and maybe you can comment to this, is it's an ability, it's a behavioral profile that does a really good job visioning. Not all of us are good at that. So some people on your team, as their leader, you have to create a vision for them, for their life. They can't do it really well themselves. And so you got to do it for them. I mean, do you find yourself with some of your people having to help them see the vision for their lives?
Absolutely. And that goes back to something you were saying earlier about different personalities and giftings in a business, and kind of on that note of personal assessments. Like I did the DISC assessment recently, and I learned, like, I'm a fast moving guy like you, but the essential others in the organization that I need will not necessarily be fast moving. And that's not a bad thing, And so tying that back to personal goals, a guy may be, most of my business are guys, so I'll keep saying guy, we're tradesmen. Some may not be maybe they'd never done goals before, or it feels foreign. And so I'm a big question asker. And so I'm, what are you excited about? What fires you up? Yeah. Where do you see yourself come alive? Like questions like that can help inform the goals, and we'll write them together. And so sometimes people need to be drawn out a little more than others. That's a more kind of foreign practice to them.
I talked to my team about leadership, and John Maxwell says, leadership is influence. It's a simple definition, and it's effective. And I think about influence often. What I believe is the most influential thing that we can have is to live a life that people want at least a part of it. I want to be like Austin, at least in this way, because he's showing me what that looks like. And I want to be like that. When you lead that way, when you're living your life that way, and it's inspiring to someone else, that's going to make you influential. And I think what I'm hearing you say is, if you can be a goal-based person that's excited about the achievement that you're going to have in the future, excited about what your life's going to look like in the future, that you've planned according to the vision, you know how you're going to get there, you got these strong values. When you're leading that way and communicating and then helping someone, if they want the life that you're living, if they want to be like that, then they're going to be excited about it and they're going to do it. If they don't want it, that's probably a person that we should look a little closer at, right? Like maybe they shouldn't be with our team. They're not a great fit. If you don't want a little bit of what I'm after, at some point there's going to be a little rub, right? Like we're going to deal with it at some point.
You prompted something I wanted to ask you about. I'm realizing I don't share my personal goals a ton with my team. I'd be curious for your thoughts on that. And my thought is like, I want to have a strong relationship with my guys, and I think there's a healthy level of vulnerability in that. But I guess I just don't talk about the personal goals, and maybe I should. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it wasn't 30 minutes before we started this conversation that Jessica and I were talking, and I was telling her about, what I see in the future for myself. When you've recruited well, Austin, and you have a team of individuals whose motivations are aligned with yours, think about it. If I can help this person get what they want and they're aligned with me, do I get what I want? So the other half of that too is I got to be thinking big enough so that they can see that their goals can fit within what I'm thinking about, right? If they want to make $1 million a year in income and I'm saying, well, I want to make $1 million in income, how does that look for them? It doesn't look that bright, right?
Yeah.
Like, listen, I want everybody. I want everybody on my team to be millionaires. I want them to do it through real estate, and I want them, I want them to make a lot of money, and I want them to be excited about that. Mainly because I want them to give a lot away, but I personally got to make a lot of money so that I can pay them a lot of money. And so, we all need to be excited about the same thing so that we can move in the same direction quickly. And so, I talk about mine, but mine sound very similar to theirs. Not conclusively, like not 100%, but it sounds familiar. And it would be a little funky for me if I couldn't come in and share with the team what I'm excited about and it not resonate with them. They think that's just silly. I want to come in and be like, hey, this is exciting. And then I want to see them smile about it because they're on this journey of life with me. And I don't want to lead against the grain. I want to like, come on, man, let's go. We're all moving in the same direction. Let's have fun doing it. That's just my thoughts on it.
I like that.
How do you, when you're leading your team, like more times than not for the leader, it's instinctual, like something feels a little off? Or have you systemized a way to check in with your team and just make sure that they're as healthy as you believe they are? I've had to do it because I'm an optimist, right? So I've had to create systems to like check in to make sure that things are as good as I think they are. But what's your system?
I think there's room for improvement in being more formal with the way I do that, more systematic. For a while, and I don't know why I stopped doing this. For a while, I would have my guys share an emotional word for how they're doing in the Monday meeting. And men particularly men in the trades, like not a lot of emotional language. So it's never to be like, all right, what's that emotional word? And sometimes they'd share a word. I'm like, that's a thinking word. That's up here. Like what's an emotional word? Like your core. That was informative. And I noticed, I need to bring those check-ins back. I noticed that would surface things that wouldn't have come up before. That would surface things that would not have come up if I just asked, hey, how are things going? Because when I ask that, it's always job performance related. Oh, this job was great. Client was really happy. We got the 5-star review, or this one took a little long. Here's why. It's very job and performative focused. So that emotional word is great. Having the goals is a helpful tool. We can come back to what are they about personally? Yeah. What do they want to achieve? What do we want to achieve as a company? And hearing how things are progressing in relation to those is a really helpful filter for how they're doing. And that will surface things because it's getting to the core of what's most important to us as an organization and them personally. But I could probably learn more from your systems in that area, and I want to bring that maybe emotional word checking back. But I think having systems for that are really helpful. So
the reason why I asked the question is what I found in studying this. It's easy to know when you're off, right? If you just ask yourself a question internally, like you know if you're off or not, right? At the company level, you look at your P&L, you look at your org chart, you look at these big things, and they tell you if you're healthy or not, right? Like if you're operating at a loss, we're not healthy, right? If we're not converting any of our leads to appointments or winning any business, then we're not healthy. But that part in the middle, that team leadership, like that, to me, that's the hard part, is diagnosing sickness in your business at the team level. I'm not a huge creature of systematic operating. I'm more of an entrepreneurial guy by nature, but I've had to systemize it because if I don't, a small problem that I could catch early will turn into a bigger problem. And to your point on the emotion words, I like that. I've never done anything like that. But my team knows in our one-on-ones that I like to talk about them personally first, if they'll do it. Force anybody to talk about your personal life. But I want to talk personally because I know this. If someone's struggling personally, there's nothing professionally that matters. It's all personal first. You got to take care of the personal life first, and then you can start tackling problems on the professional side. And so I like to just hit it right up front. Like, is everything going good at home? It's simple. They know, so it's like, how things going? and if they smile right away, I know we don't have to talk a whole lot. If they don't smile right away, and even if they talk very little, I know something's up. More times than not, when I say, how's life? You smile, like, it's okay. It's good. It's at least okay, right? So I would just encourage you, like when you're one-on-ones or when you have quiet time with people, just ask them, how's life? If they smile, then you're in good shape. But if they don't smile, then you might have to dig in a little bit, right? Anyways, if you crack the code on it, let me know.
I like the smile indicator. I like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I've just noticed it. It's hard to smile when you're not feeling good.
Or sometimes life will get so tough that it's laughable, maybe even in these instances where you can't believe it, kind of talking in extremes here. But by and large, yes.
Well, I mean, we can go off on this for a long time, but the reason why it's important to be spiritually healthy, that's how you live free. That's how you take life a little less serious, like all the things of life. When we move away from our spiritual health, the things of the world become more important and they weigh on us more. And things get rough. But when you keep it simple, I'll tell you a good story. My little guy, he's 7 years old and he's smart. He thinks a lot. I'm very proud of him. But when I put him to bed, you think I'm going to heaven? And I go, buddy, you're a good dude, man. Like, don't, what are you worried about that? He's like, I don't know. I was just wondering. And I go, well, what are the two things that God wants you to do? And my kids know the answer to this. Love God and love God's children. And I go, you think you're doing that? He said, yeah, I think I'm doing that. And I go, there you go, man. Like, you're gonna make it, bud. It's like, don't worry about that. You just worry about loving God and loving people. I think that when you make it more complex than that, you're moving away from that spiritual health. And sometimes you got to pull people back in. You got to simplify it for them. You got to remind them that life is more about love than things. And so refocus yourself back on making that your purpose. Because if you get worried about promotions, or if you get worried about raises, if you get worried about having a portfolio of homes, and why it's taken you so many years to do it, like, that's a heavy burden. It doesn't have to be that heavy, right? We know that. Maybe we move away from it at times, but it is that simple. And my kids are a good reminder of that because I'm teaching them. It's that recall. The more I've got to
say it back to me now.
Yeah. Well, and then I get to hear it, right? Because I'm teaching it, and then I get to go live it. Okay. Leading your company. We talked about vision at the team level. How do you go vision plan? It sounds like you just did this recently. How do you go vision plan for the company as a whole? Like, what's that process look like for you?
I think, going back to those words I keep harping on that were all about humility and empathy, I want to be hyper aware of big pain points in the world and then figure out, can our business help with those pain points? And if it's a really big pain point, that means it's a big market. And that's good for me, business owner, because I want to serve a big market with a big need. That will make me a large and healthy business, or that's the vision, go back to vision, mission. So with those words, humility, I need to realize I don't know all the things about the pain point, and that pain point will evolve over time. I don't know everything about the market. I don't know everything about our customer. I need to continue to just recognize that and recognize that I won't always be right. I don't always know. And then the empathy piece, when that's paired with humility, it's that hyper other orientation, hyper awareness. And so, while I'm not in the field, I'm in the office mostly, I really work to get in the homes of our homeowners and practice that empathy. And that's done both actively and passively. Passively, I'm just kind of observing when I'm in there, feeling an emotional pulse in that home environment. Yeah. And then actively, I'm asking a ton of questions. Large open-ended question, then a less large open-ended question, then some specific targeted questions, gathering information. I don't know that I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'll come back to our big mission is, so it's interesting to look around at society and see a lot of brokenness, a lot of pain, a lot of hardship. And our belief at Loyal is that largely stems from the home environment. And if we can contribute to making that environment healthier, then we have healthier communities, healthier neighborhoods, healthier society. And so make that home environment a place of thriving, and also be community builders as a company. So one of my favorite things, probably my favorite thing about what we do, is connecting people. We'll have a family that's new to Austin. They don't know people. We'll plug them into friendships. We'll introduce them. And it's just funny that their handyman is doing like it's kind of unusual, but I love that. Well, concern is the wrong word, but I'm always trying to learn more about what we're here to fulfill, what our mission is really serving. What's that pain point, that challenge that we're serving.
Just from what you've explained right there, it has to be a big part of how you hire. If you're not hiring people that care about that, this shit isn't going to work. I mean, you could probably find a better handyman, better carpenter maybe. Doesn't want to help anybody, but it's really good carpenter. That isn't going to fit well with you. Are you guys, do you think you're good at that yet, at identifying talent that in mind, or has that been a challenge to figure out?
That's been a learning curve for me. I got a lot better in a short amount of time, and then just getting a lot of reps has been really helpful. So for a recent hire, this guy brought in who's just phenomenal. I looked at 200 resumes, was doing it through Indeed. I did video interviews with 50 people. I did first round in-persons with about 15, and then went down to 5 second round, and then made the one hire. So that was labor intensive. But what I learned from the great CEOs is like, spend a lot of time on hiring. Hire slow, fire fast. So it's like, all right, I'm going to do it. I tell people, like, we're looking for unicorns in the trades. Finding excellent technical capability and skill set, that's tough, but you can find it. It's around. Finding the type of soft skills that align with us, wildly difficult, very rare. And so I'm asking all these questions, hypotheticals, tell me about a time when, and I'm trying to continue to get better at that. And I think, that's an area I hopefully will continue to grow in.
Yeah. I could just think like just the process in general, they have to be patient. From my experience, we have the construction company. A lot of these guys, these trades, they're not patient people. They probably weed themselves out in your hiring process because they're just not patient enough to deal with you. And if if they can't be patient with you for an opportunity, how would they be patient with a homeowner?
Totally.
Yeah.
No, you're exactly right. And you're bringing me back to just funny moments of, guys just weeding themselves out of the process. Yeah. Coming back, shooting like after the video interview or something, shooting back a frustrated remark. And I'm like, you just weeded yourself out. You made it earlier, or made it easier for me to filter you out. Or I'm kind of hiring on a rolling basis because I'm always looking for those unicorns. So I had a guy recently, it was kind of challenging to schedule the video interview, some challenging communication back and forth. Finally, we schedule it, doesn't show up, and says, I thought it was at this time. I came back to him and I wanted to be respectful and not be dismissive, not say something mean, but I said, hey, here's what I look for. You got to be on it, and you got to be on top of communication tools. We use software tools in the business. You got to know how to use them and be super organized. And if you are still interested in working for Loyal, you got to get back on my radar in a creative way. We'll see if he does anything. But and even after that, it was just more excuses. And that I'm not looking for that.
Yeah, if you stand a homeowner up, do you think you get a second chance there?
Oh yeah,
maybe.
We don't use excuses in the business. Back to the humility piece, like we don't make excuses.
Yeah, just own it.
We screwed up. We're sorry. Here's how we're going to fix it.
Yeah. Leading your company. What meetings do you have with yourself, frequent basis, where you're sitting down and again, you're trying to diagnose sickness? Mm-hmm. What are the things you look at, your KPIs or your financial statements, whatever it is? What are the things that you look at on a monthly basis that give you a good read on, hey, we're either healthy or we're sick?
That's both a biweekly and a monthly thing. I would like to have some better systems just for myself. Right now that happens through advisors in the business or partners. So my bookkeeper, very fortunately for me, is kind of wearing a CFO hat a little bit, or brings that perspective. She's not just processing the financials, she's asking questions. And so that will bring my awareness to things and bring a new lens to our financials that's beneficial to me. So we're chatting about once a month. We don't have a recurring meeting on the calendar. That probably wouldn't be a bad idea, but that's about the cadence, kind of around the monthly close. I have a mentor through that mastermind group, really gifted marketing guy. I am really good at sales. I am not really good at marketing. So that's a great compliment to me there. But he's asking about the business holistically, and he's surfacing things from me that maybe I wouldn't do on my own. And he's not afraid to ask the hard question. He has that authority with me. So it's really probably those two meetings that produce that kind of benefit you're getting at.
Yeah. There's a lot of books out there on this stuff, right? Go read and run your company. But I'm always interested because some people are very formal about it. They have their monthly meeting and this is what they look at. And some people, they're instinctual. Something feels off, so I'm going to go bird dog that. The whole 5 whys, right? Like, well, why did that happen? Well, why did that happen? Why? And then you get to the root cause and you figure it out, right? Something's solved. What do you think?
How are you in that, by the way? Are you instinctual? Are you super systematic about it?
Naturally, I'm instinctual, but I've created a rhythm for myself to make sure that I don't run on instinct. I have a mentor that said, he hates the word gut because gut decision sounds like gave up thinking. Yeah,
Fair.
I'm a gut.
Fair.
I like to move fast, so I can operate by instinct. I mean, that doesn't worry me. I don't have a whole lot of worry in me, so I've manufactured some worry. A monthly financial statement, a weekly review of my account balances. I have semi-annual reviews with my teammates to make sure that my semi-annual reviews, they're not about them. They're about me. My questions that I asked them is, well, how am I doing for you? Like, those are the questions. So we're completely different than most companies out there where the annual is all about your performance. Look, I'm doing that on a weekly basis. My team knows if they're failing or not on a weekly basis in our one-on-ones. The annual is all about, or the semi-annual for us is all about, well, is the company doing what it needs to do for you? And I'm after three things in that meeting. I'm after, am I training you well enough? Am I equipping you well enough? And am I motivating you well enough? If I do those three things, I'm doing my job as a leader. But it doesn't come up often, right? Like, if I'm failing in one of those regards, and if you have a resourceful person, if you have a person that takes initiative and they go figure things out themselves, like, they're not going to just naturally come up to you and be like, hey, I'm under-equipped or I'm under-trained here. They're going to go figure it out. And that's beautiful. But the leader isn't doing their job if they're not equipping their team, if they're not training their team, if they're not motivating their team, right? Like, so really what you do is you have an extraordinary employee or teammate that you're not getting your full value out of because you're not doing your job. They're doing the job for you because they take initiative and they do all these brilliant things. But like, you owe them, that's your job, leader. You owe them that. So those are some of the things I do. And then, like, I do think of it as a health component too. Like, there's symptoms. The old, like, if there's smoke, there's fire. Like, that's usually true. So if I start to see a little smoke somewhere, I'm very willing to go dive deeper into it. So, and I won't treat the symptom. I want to know what's causing the symptom. So I'm not a surface level problem guy. I like to get deeper into it, and I'll ask a lot of questions. Fortunately, as an officer in the military, I fought with my radio. Now, look, I could do the hand-to-hand thing. I was very good with my rifle. I was a baseball player, so I can throw a grenade. I could do some of those things. But like, my job was to fight with my radio, to maneuver forces, to suppress and destroy the enemy. And to be able to picture the battlefield, you have to have the people out there doing the fight reporting back to you. And so I was raised up in my early 20s as a leader to go seek information from my soldiers so that I could make the right battlefield call. And so to this day, I believe in going to the line, pulling the information I need from them so that I can make the decision. It's not going to be like, hey, it's your job to come communicate to me. I'm going to come ask questions to you. And that's why I like the weekly meeting with my team. It's a chance for me to ask questions to them if I need to.
And that's a whole team meeting, or that's individual?
No, ours are one-on-one. I do see value in the team meeting, but I run in spurts on that because, like, they're busy. I hire busy people. Like, they don't sit still. And so we're always busy. There's a day once a quarter or so that we pull everybody back and we meet, but we're not meeting weekly as a team. I think I would frustrate my people if I did. It would frustrate me too. Outside of, like, just having more information, I would like that. But once your team has been with you for a little while, they could send you an email with the information that they know you want. Like, you don't have to meet to pull that out of them. Like, if I were to go to some of my teammates and say, hey, can you give me an update? They know me. They know what I'm after. They just send me an email. Like, here's the update.
Yeah.
Or it can be a drive-by. Like, hey, this is where I'm at on that. And I like to pour my energy into the team. So I will go stop by, especially first thing in the morning, because that's when I'm my best. So I'll go stop by first thing in the morning and I'll say, how's everybody doing? And then I'll get some stuff from them at that point. Like, if there's something urgent, they'll give it to me right then. Otherwise, we go work. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Holy cow.
We're great.
Joe Rogan, man.
Yeah, I know.
No, we can wrap up, but I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about wealth building. I have a belief that leaders need to be good wealth builders, mainly because that's a risk to you being a great leader. If you have financial concerns or financial risk to you personally, it's like that personal thing we talked about. You got to handle the personal before you can handle the professional. And it's something that can anchor you down very quickly if you're not good at it. What I want to hear from you is, one, what's your definition of wealth, right? I think we all have our own unique definition. And then two, do you think it's important that leaders build true wealth or make it a priority?
Yeah. My definition of wealth, I would say resources that spill over. And I think, healthy wealth goes alongside pretty extreme generosity. I think you and I are similar, that big believer in generosity. And my father modeled that well. It was one of the silent things. We watched him be very generous. So resources are spilling over, and ideally that spillover is, a great tool for generosity. that association between successful leaders and wealth is a new one for me, and I hadn't really thought about that. I think I see the importance of it because a good leader, wealth is the fruit of success in an arena. Resources is a good indication that you're doing the right thing. Yeah. You're creating value in the market. So that would mean, a good and successful leader, hopefully they have wealth. And then I think with wealth also comes more responsibility. And so to stay a leader with a lot of resources, you got to steward it really well. And so it becomes a refining mechanism for leadership. So I'm kind of dancing around your question, but I would say yes, that connection.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, a lot of people define it this way. Wealth is freedom. Like whatever number or whatever asset that gives you complete freedom, that's when you're wealthy. And a lot of that has to do with your own personal living style and all of that, right? Certainly you could rack up a bunch of lifestyle expenses that make your wealth number have to be ginormous. But at some point you're going to be free, right? Financially. And then to me, like the reason why that's important is it's extremely hard for someone to get you to compromise on your principles, on who you are when you don't need money anymore. Like when you're free of like the worldly demand, at least financially, your ability to say no just goes through the roof. I think a leader has to be really good at saying no and has to be really good at not compromising who they are for a client or a dollar or whatever, you do. The right thing is always the right thing to do. And however you can position yourself to do that, that's the best way to. Yeah, man. The other thing too is the more wealthy you are, the more generally you can help. And I guess the last piece of it would be is leadership's influence, right? And this world is influenced by money, and so you can catch a lot of eyeballs as a leader if you've been able to make a lot of money, because people will want that. They will want a lot of money before they realize they want all the rest of it too. My goal in life would be if I can achieve somewhat publicly maybe, then maybe people will listen to me on how I built that wealth, and then I will bring them along the spiritual journey too. Like, okay, well, now you have wealth. This is what you do with it. You steward it and you help people. And I think ultimately that's the whole reason for it anyways. God gave me this wealth for a reason. The reason isn't so that I can go buy a Ferrari. Maybe I do. Maybe I go buy a Ferrari because I have that much, but I better help some people along the way or else I'm not really stewarding it well. So I don't know. There's no perfect answer to it, but I do think freedom helps you be who you need to be. Giving, this will be our last topic here. How have you approached giving in your life? And do you think they should be givers as well?
I'll answer that one first. Absolutely. I think generous with, your time. And a lot of that time generosity will happen with your people. Generous with your resources, your money. If you've got other ways to serve and benefit people, it's a great outlet for generosity. If you're a great connector, leaders should be givers. I think for me, and this is the fruit of seeing a lot of great examples over the years in that community I grew up with, seeing just great examples of generosity and of giving, I learned how to be in tune with kind of what moves me in terms of needs that I can give to. So for me, homelessness has been a big one that I've given a lot of money to and given a lot of time to. So here in Austin, I love the work of Community First, give money to what they're doing. I volunteer with Mobile Loaves and Fishes. And that is such a highlight for me. I'm doing it monthly. I could do it more frequently, but it's always hard for me to make that. It's right at 5:00 on a Monday. So I'm stressed before it, but I get there and it's just the best because for 2 or 3 hours, I'm not thinking at all about myself. We're not in a hurry. We're being completely present with folks and we're handing out food and sometimes we have some clothes as well. But my mission is to serve these folks. I want to serve them in a way that doesn't make them feel less than or worse or unequal. And so I'm just trying to be present with them and relate to them. So, to your original question, yes, I think it's really important for leaders to be giver. And then that's kind of what it looks like for me now. And it's instrumental in my healthy well-being as a man and as a leader.
I completely agree. I love that you're doing that. Mondays at 5 are tough. It's funny. My kids play soccer, so on Thursdays and Tuesdays, I have to be home by 4:40 to make it to soccer practice on time. And it's always a challenge because it's like, well, I need the extra 20 minutes. I mean, do I need the extra 20 minutes? Probably not. I could use them. But yeah, I have to be on it to be able to get home on time. Listen, I'm grateful for the value that you brought the team in this conversation. What are you working on right now, or how can people follow you?
Yeah, they can. So we got an Instagram handle. I'm trying to build that up. It's a newer page, and so it's going to be scant on content a little bit. But that's Loyal Home Concierge. Our website, loyalhomeconcierge.com. And what I want to be doing is putting more resources out there for helping homeowners create an environment of thriving. Going back to that problem statement. And so if people are aware of statistics, more illuminating the challenge, or resources, I'm all ears for that. Would love to learn and more how we can better fulfill on that mission.
I love that. Yeah, leading your family is not all that different than leading your team, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Schuyler.